On January 31st, British Columbia, in an attempt to get ahead of its drug use problem, joined Oregon decriminalizing user amounts of hard drugs. British Columbia covers the most western segment of Canada and includes the big city of Vancouver. The decriminalization is part of a multi-pronged approach to try and cut down on the high number of deaths there connected to drugs. As the new law there was taking place at the end of January, a network crew from CBC News, that's Canada's national news outlet, they paid a visit to Portland to see what the future might hold. Here's how their report began.
This is Portland, Oregon, 2 years after decriminalizing personal amounts of hard drugs. The open drug use, the deaths, worse than ever.
Where are we here now?
This is Skidmore Fountain, which has been called Fentanyl Fountain by some of the folks that we've interacted with.
The reporter there on the story is Lindsay Ducombe. I caught up with her as she traveled to cover forest fires in the BC recently. When she was in Portland, she spent time downtown with police taking a look at the challenges that we face every day. She told me there were some obvious differences between Portland and Vancouver, BC, not so much in drug laws, but in the location of the drug use.
It's very interesting to compare the two cities, because I think one of the things that we noticed, and I was working with the producer, Georgie Smythe, and camera video producer, Andrew Lee, is that so many of the people who were using on the streets and living on the streets in Portland seem to be very spread out over a large region of the downtown, several blocks. Whereas in BC, or in Vancouver specifically, it certainly is more focused in geographically to a highly concentrated area in our downtown east side. Now, recently, a tent encampment was moved out by the city, so it has become more spread out, or at least runs the potential for that to happen as the fallout from that continues. But it was a different sort of interaction, because we did feel that it was block upon block upon block of seeing the real human suffering of addiction.
I thought that was an interesting difference. Hers very concentrated, ours kind of spread out. She told me she'd been briefed on how much drug use there was in our city, so that wasn't a big surprise when she got here. She rode along with Officer David Bayer in downtown and saw the open drug markets of Portland for herself.
See this guy right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, watch this.
What's he doing?
He's probably smoking fentanyl. See that?
Yeah.
And we're in what's basically a police car. It's unmarked, but we're pretty obviously the police. Hi there, put that knife away, please. What are you smoking?
Fetty.
Okay, just powder fentanyl?
Yeah.
Is that what you drop right there?
Yeah.
Right there?
Yeah.
Can you pick that up so someone else doesn't find it, or a kid doesn't find that, please?
Lindsay, the Canadian reporter, said it all seemed very routine for the police.
I got Narcan on one. Hey, we gotta go. Hey. My partner's calling me, asking for Narcan.
Okay. And that means
someone's overdosing.
overdosing.
Yeah, you just asked for it on the radio.
How often does this happen?
Every day.
But still, 2 people a day die from drug overdoses in Oregon. British Columbia's death toll is 3 times that. Decriminalization hasn't brought those numbers down.
Chase, wake up, buddy. There you go. Thanks.
Now I can say we used it.
He's gotten Narcan 4 milligrams in the left nostril.
In the first year, opioid overdose deaths rose 52%.
It's amazing video, I think. Emergency workers on the scene said that same person had been revived from another overdose just the day before. Meanwhile, the CBC also covered the first day of decriminalization in British Columbia on January 31st. They found many were unaware of the new law on the streets. The network also pointed out that police had generally stopped arresting anyone for having small amounts of drugs back in 2020. British Columbia is the first province to decriminalize in Canada. Toronto is requesting the same permission. The Minister of Mental Health and Addiction said it's a good move.
We will be able to reduce the stigma, the fear and shame that keep people who use drugs silent about their use or using alone, and help more people access life-saving supports and treatment.
Sound familiar? So how's it going up there? Well, it's a bit difficult to tell since one of the main goals is just to reduce the stigma around drug use. But last week I bumped into a Canadian tourist while I was out doing a story on Portland's downtown. Turns out he lives just outside the city of Vancouver, and he does seem the same problems there still that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I think we're really dealing with a lot of the same issues. But yeah, it's just, Abbotsford, it's gotten really bad. There's huge homeless population. It's just drugs. It's the drugs, the fentanyl, and then because they need the cash, they crime, they get the drugs, they're homeless, crime, drugs, home. You know what I mean? And they don't seem to be worried about getting them off the drugs. They're just trying to keep them not from dying.
So there you have it. British Columbia has decriminalized small amounts of street drugs, and it will stay that way for the next 3 years until January 31st, 2026. Now, while we're talking about drugs, Portland-based DHM Research is out with new polling on Measure 110. They found that 51% of voters believe it has been bad for Oregon. They also found most voters believe 110 has made drug addiction, homelessness, and crime worse in Oregon, and that 63% would support bringing back criminal penalties for drug possession while keeping the funding for treatment. And 59% of the voters think the root cause of homelessness is drug addiction and mental health issues, not a lack of affordable housing. The DHM survey was conducted during the last week of April. They polled 500 people from around the state. The results have a margin of error plus or minus 4.5%. Well, those poll results are out just as Portland police are warning the public about a potentially very bad batch of drugs being bought and sold on our streets. 8 people died from suspected drug overdoses between 11:30 Friday morning and 4:30 Sunday afternoon. Here's a map showing where each overdose happened. You'll notice there are only 7 points on the map there, and that's because one case involved 2 men inside an apartment. Police tell us it appears the victims believed they were taking cocaine, but it turned out to be a blend of coke and fentanyl, or possibly even pure powdered fentanyl. In at least 6 of the 8 cases, police say it is likely fentanyl is to blame, with more testing needed in the other 2. The medical examiner's office is teaming up with Portland Police Bureau's Narcotics and Organized Crime Unit to investigate the deaths now.